Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another live stream. Me and Logan are here tonight with you. So, I thought, with the week that it's been in the action figure collecting community, the hot topic seems to be the expense of action figures and, how expensive it's getting to collect action figures. So, I thought, I'd pose the question to you guys, and I'll give my own thoughts about whether this hobby is just getting too expensive. So that's kind of the main focus, but I'm sure we'll venture into other things like talking about the latest HasLab and its status and who knows what else. But let's take first a quick roll call just to see who's in the house. And I see Everett is in the house. Bob from Ontario is in the house. Welcome. Joseph, I see, is in the house. Welcome. Michael, what's up? Blake is in the house. What's up? Bean. Quinn's Comics is in the house as always. Lord Venger. Paul, what's up? So it looks like we got a pretty good crowd tonight. Seeing Brock. So to me, the question of whether the hobby is getting too expensive or not, I think it's pretty simple, but I also think it's something that only each one of us can answer for ourselves. I don't think there's one general answer to that question. Some might want you to think otherwise. Some people seem to like to tell you, this hobby is too expensive and you shouldn't be buying things. But again, I think it differs. Whether it's a HasLab, whether it's whether it's a Four Horsemen, Mythic Legions figure, whatever, while I think Four Horsemen do a great job with their figures, do I think they're worth the price that those things cost? No, not personally, but I certainly understand that there are plenty of people out there who think otherwise. And I feel like that's what we forget, at least when we get into these Facebook groups or what have you, is we kind of forget that everybody's different. Everybody has different budgets. Everybody has different likes and tastes. Obviously, everybody, if the prices could be lower, nobody wants to pay more than they have to. So, I mean, that's a big given. But then the next question kind of comes out to, are lots of people really like leaving the hobby? There's a lot of complaining about prices, and I do think, we've talked about this before in previous live streams. I do feel like, as prices go up on things, people tend to get a little more picky about what they buy. They're not, if there is an actual, such a thing as a completist collector in this day and age, they've got to be very few and far between. I mean, it used to be back in the day that you would have people, that would just buy everything because they were completists. Like if they collected Star Wars figures, they would just buy every Star Wars figure out there because they were a completist. Marvel, what have you. But I feel like there's just way too much product that comes out, and too many different things, and with the not even counting the rising cost of the figures and everything. So I feel like there the completest action figure collector is probably near, if not extinct, near extinct. Tiglo says nobody should be telling you how to spend your own money. I 100% agree with you. And let's be clear. There's a difference. Like if I come on here and say, and which I have said, like this latest HasLab, it's not really for me. I'm just not that interested in Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider, and so I'm not backing it. I'm not sitting here telling you you shouldn't back it. I'm not even telling you, the thing is too expensive. It's because I'm not that into the character. It's more money than I'm willing to spend on something like that. If it was cheaper, would I be more tempted to buy it? Probably. If it was only $100, I would be much more likely to buy it as opposed to $350. On the flip side of that, though, sticking to, so I'm not telling you that you shouldn't be buying. I'm just simply saying I'm not buying it. So there's a difference in somebody voicing their opinion that, yeah, this is just something that doesn't interest me, as opposed to somebody that's going around saying nobody should be backing this. Hasbro's ripping you off, and if you're buying this, you're an idiot. I mean, and we see that in these Facebook communities and such. So, yeah, I'm 100% agreeing with you on that one, Tiglo, that nobody should be telling you how to spend your own money. And that goes back to my original point that something that is worth, you know, that's why, like, I never understand this fascination that some people like to get into trying to dissect, like, this should only cost this much, and this should only cost this much, and this should only cost this much. So, like, first of all, like, they know, like, they're these experts that know how to toy manufacturing works, and they know everything, and they can tell you, sit here and tell you, like it's fact that this is how much something could cost. But at the end of the day, even if Hasbro released an actual line by line cost sheet for, say, like the HasLab, so that we could see exactly how much everything costs for them to make the toy, and then see how much of a profit margin. Why does that really matter? Is that really going to make you want to buy the Ghost Rider more? If Hasbro can prove to you that the $350 price based on the cost of making it is fair, is that all of a sudden going to change your mind and have you go, oh wow, well, Hasbro showed me, so I'm going to go back this thing now? I mean, I really don't think so. So I don't know why people get so caught up in this idea of trying to justify or try and say it's not worth something. If it's worth it to you, you buy it. If it's not worth it to you, you don't. I bought the Sentinel. We haven't gotten Galactus, so I'm not going to say, that I have no buyer's remorse with Galactus yet, because I won't know that until I have it in hand. But I bought the Sentinel. People swore that the Sentinel was way overpriced, and maybe it is. I don't know. But I've had no buyer's remorse from buying that Sentinel. I've enjoyed it in my collection. It's a great display piece. You could make the same argument with these Arcade 1-Up machines that you see behind me. Are they really worth the price that Arcade 1-Up charges? That's debatable. But for me, they've been worth it because I've enjoyed them. I enjoy, how they look in my room here. I enjoy playing them, so they bring me enjoyment. So regardless of, how much profit Arcade 1-Up makes from these machines, it's worth it to me to buy them because I get enjoyment out of them. So, again, when people get into these debates about the cost, it just kind of always amazes me. Apollo Ape disagrees with me. What do you disagree with, Apollo? Blake says, the Ghost Rider is too expensive compared to the two recent huge figures that were close to what they were charging for the car. Plus Galactus and Sentinel are kind of characters whereas the car isn't. Well, I mean, can you honestly sit there and say that the Galactus, the cost to make Galactus, especially with the recent inflation, is that much different from the Ghost Rider and his car? I can't. But if you're saying to me, I much, Galactus is a much more important character to me for my collection, and therefore it was worth it to me to buy the Galactus, whereas the Ghost Rider is not. Well, that's where I would agree with you, and that's how I feel, which is why I'm not backing it. And again, and if for those of you who are always here for the live streams, and before they even announced the Ghost Rider, we've on multiple occasions talked about what could Hasbro do for this year's HasLab, right? And we debated about whether vehicles were a better choice, or larger figure characters was the better choice. I think most of us agreed that sticking with the larger figure format like the Sentinel and Galactus was a better choice than trying to do vehicles. I've said from day one that trying to get a large appeal, meaning a large number of people to be interested in buying a vehicle, any kind of vehicle for Marvel Legends, was going to be a bit of an uphill battle. That's not to say there aren't people out there who don't want vehicles. And obviously, once again, I feel like if you say, well, I want an X-Men Blackbird, but I'm only willing to pay $100 for it, and I'm just throwing that number out the window. I don't know what somebody would pay for an X-Men Blackbird, but what you're really saying, at least what I hear, is you'd be, if it wasn't super expensive, you'd be interested in getting it, but otherwise it's just not worth spending a lot of money on. And I feel like most of the vehicles for Marvel Legends is where people fall with that. Did I say a minute ago that if it was less expensive, I would buy it, coupled with the fact that it's not. I said more of a chance if it's less expensive. Because I mean, I actually, I'm not super into Robbie Reyes and Ghost Rider, but I think it's pretty cool looking. I think Hasbro did a good job with the Ghost Rider in the car. I have no, it's not, I didn't like when I watched the live stream when they announced it last week, I wasn't like, oh my God, this looks like crap. I mean, I was like, it's pretty cool, but I'm just not that much into Robbie Reyes and Ghost Rider, so that's why it's not worth it to me buying. If it was cheaper, and if we got all these bells and whistles and it was like only $100, especially if we got the stretch goals, because to me, like, the stretch goals are probably more interesting than the car, even though we only know the Mephisto at this point. But I have a feeling that if we ever got to see all the stretch goals for this, those would be more interesting than the car and the Ghost Rider himself. So at a lower price, and I think we all fall in that boat. Again, nobody wants to pay more money. Nobody wants to pay $350 for anything, right? If you could only have to spend $100 or something as opposed to paying $350 or something, you're going to choose the $100. No matter what it is, you would go with the lesser price. And as the price goes up, people are going to get choosier and pickier about whether they're going to buy something or something. So that's just, doesn't matter what it is, that's always going to be the case. But again, to me, and this is what I talked about when I did that video on, I think it was Tuesday, when I said the Ghost Rider and the car doesn't have as wide appeal. But there are plenty, I feel like there are plenty of Marvel Legend collectors out there that if it was something they really wanted, I don't doubt for 1 minute that there's at least 9,000 Marvel Legend collectors out there that if they wanted it, if they really wanted the Ghost Rider, that was like something they were dying to have, they could come up with the $350 to back it. I know there are collectors out there who, for whatever reason, just can't afford right now to spend that kind of money. There are definitely those people as well. But I know there's plenty of people in this hobby. This is a luxury hobby. This is a hobby where people have demonstrated over and over again they have lots of money to just spend on things like action figures. So there's nothing, in this hobby that you just have to have. If you're putting yourself in debt so you can buy action figures, well, I mean, that's your choice, but I would not say that that's a smart financial choice if that's what you're doing. So, 9 times out of 10, a lot of people in this hobby have the income, the disposable income, to be able to spend on expensive items. So I feel like if the car had a wider appeal, this thing getting funded, the price is not what's necessarily really holding it back from getting funded. I feel like, yes, some people are not going to back it because of the price. They just can't afford $350, but more likely than not, people just aren't interested enough in this particular item to back it and spend $350. Neil says he's backing the HasLab 100% now because so many are throwing a fit about it. Well, I mean, if you're backing it, more power. I think that's great. However, if you're only backing it just to spite people, I mean, if you got the money, go for it. But I mean, there are obviously there are people who want the Ghost Rider because right now, let me refresh this, get the most current total. We're at 5,200 227 backers on Ghost Rider. So there's at least 5,227 people out there who apparently really want Ghost Rider and his car for whatever reason. Some people are probably just diehard fans. Some people may be buying it with the idea that they're going to be able to resell it down the road. Who knows? That you can buy up to 5 of these things if you want to. I don't know, other than somebody who's going to try and resell. I don't know why you would need 5 Ghost Riders, but the limit on this is 5,000. So right now there's at least 5,227 people that are interested in getting this particular HasLab. But that comparatively to the previous HasLabs or the recent G.I. Joe Classified, I mean, this thing is moving at a snail's pace, right? It's very unlikely at this point. We are basically just a little bit over 24 hours until the deadline for the early bird figure. So unless Hasbro is stocking up backers from like overseas that they can throw into the counter last minute, there's very little likelihood that this is going to get to 9,000 by the end of tomorrow. And therefore, we are going to lose the early bird figure, the human Robbie Reyes, and therefore that's going to make this campaign even seem less valuable to people, or like less that you're getting your money's worth than more. So you might even start to see people canceling their orders if the Robbie Reyes doesn't get included. The moment this counter starts going downward, then you might as well stick a fork in it, in my view. We saw that with the Rancor, when they revealed the cardboard backdrop as one of the stretch goals, and then all of a sudden the counter just started to go down, 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 down. Eventually it started to come up a little bit, but if the counter starts to go down, then I would say stick a fork in it. Whether this gets backed, it's still got 39 days left until the campaign ends to get to the minimum 9,000. So it's still got plenty. I'm not at this point going to say it's not going to get backed, but this is definitely, probably the Marvel Legends brand team's toughest HasLab. They are probably, sitting there biting their nails, wondering if this is going to actually get backed or not. And I think even before this thing launched, I think they knew going in that this was going to be a tough one. So Perceive Velocity says, Mythic Legions gives the collector so much more than Hasbro at the cost. For you they do. But for me, because I'm not really that interested in the figures that they make, I'm interested in Marvel characters, I'm interested in G.I. Joe characters, I'm interested in Star Wars characters. So even if the figures that Four Horsemen make are maybe nicer, and since I don't really own any of them, I can't sit here and say that. But regardless of even if they're nicer, they're not worth anywhere near them. I'd rather pay $30 for Marvel Legends than $80 for a Mythic Legions. Now, again, that's not saying that Mythic Legions are bad figures or that you're wrong for liking the Mythic Legions. That's simply saying my tastes really don't, lean towards that type of action figure, and therefore I'm just not that interested in it. And that's where I feel like when people start commenting on social media and stuff, they're speaking what they personally feel, but they say it in a way like we all should think that way. And that's like where I feel like we kind of get in the habit of, okay, well, this is what I think, and so I'm going to tell you what I think, but you're welcome to feel a totally different way, and then don't get mad if someone disagrees with you and thinks a different way. Social media is going to be social media, and people are going to sit on these Facebook groups and they're going to fight and they're going to bicker, and there's going to be people who are going to post just to try and push people's buttons and so on and so forth. So, I'm not sitting here thinking that I'm going to say anything that's going to change social media. But, when I watch, when I go into these Facebook groups and stuff, and I see these people like going at it with each other and stuff, I just like, it makes me shake my head, to be honest. Well, again, Oz, I I don't I have no clue how much LED lights work, or the engineering that goes into, the way the system works. And I don't think you do either. That's where I wish people would quit trying to act like they know exactly how much these things make. Because and one reason why I say that is because at the end of the day, like I said before, does it even really matter? If Hasbro, like I said, if Hasbro came out and showed you the actual cost of everything and what goes into it to prove to you that they're not ripping you off, that $350 is a legitimate price. If you're not interested in backing this now, is that going to change your mind? And I'm pretty sure for most of us, the answer would be no. If you're not interested in backing it, then it really doesn't matter, what it costs to make it. That's just people looking for an excuse to say, well, this should be cheaper. How dare Hasbro charge this much for it? And, and if I thought that might convince Hasbro to like lower the price, if I thought Hasbro was going to come out, next week and say, you know what, guys, you're right. We listened to you. $350 is too much. We're only going to charge you $250. If I thought there was any chance in hell of that happening, I'd be like, go for it. But there's not. Hasbro's not going to come out and then lower the price of this. So, that's where I go back to, if it interests you enough to spend $350 is the price, no matter what. Okay. So there's no changing that. So now it's either, is it worth buying for $350 or is it not worth $350 to you? And if the answer is not, don't back it. If the answer is yes, then back it. And trying to convince other people not to back it. Or on the flip side, I mean, I don't know how many times today I saw people posting this stupid idea that even if you don't want the HasLab, go back it. You can cancel it on Monday, but I want the early bird figure. So go on and back it so we can get to the 9,000 so I can get the early bird figure. Like, oh my God, you're begging people to go out and back something they're not interested in getting so that you can get the early bird figure. I mean, if that doesn't sound like desperation, I don't know what does. But sci-fi and fantasy, what's up, man? Exotic Carfax. Mephisto. Mephisto, he is worth it. Mephisto. See, and I would disagree. While the Mephisto looked good, I'm happy with my Diamond Select one. Now, I understand that not everybody has the Diamond Select one, and going and spending between 100 and $200 to buy the Diamond Select one from the secondary market is not very appealing either. But like the Mephisto doesn't do. I mean, certainly if it was a single release, I would get the Mephisto, but it's not enough to want to get me to back this campaign. Now, will we even get to any of the other stretch goals, and how many other stretch goals are there? Those are questions that I don't even know if we'll get the answer to. So, if those happen, I'll reevaluate my decision of backing it, but at this point, based on what we know right now, there's just not enough there to back. He had it. He had his walk before the live stream. I made sure to get his walk in today. Well, I mean, it's a digital render. I mean, I didn't see anything wrong with the body. I do think, based on what we've seen with the digital render versus the Diamond Select one, I think the Diamond Select toy one looks nicer. Um, I was talking to the sculptor of the Diamond Select one on Twitter, and he was saying how I told him it'd be great if Diamond Select Toys reissued the the Mephisto figure, and he was like he would love to get a shot at doing the new head sculpt, a new head sculpt for that figure, and having it reissued with the new head sculpt. I've seen people floating the idea, what if Diamond Select Toys, reissues the Mephisto right now? And the answer would be Hasbro would probably be pissed. But the reason why that's probably not going to happen is probably because Marvel would not let Diamond Select Toys reissue Mephisto right now. Maybe down the road, but not right now because Hasbro's the master toy license holder, and so they pretty much get to dictate. If they're unhappy with another company, a lot of people wonder why like Diamond Select Toys doesn't do more Marvel figures and such. Well, I think that's because they're restricted in what they can do because again, Hasbro's actually the master license holder for Marvel figures. So, Diamond Select Toys has this little window that they're given to work with, but I don't see Marvel would allow Diamond Select Toys to reissue the Mephisto figure right now. Now, one thing I have wondered is, I mean, that Mephisto figure was released back in 2006, and as far as I know of, has never been reissued. So I wonder why, if there's a reason why that figure has never been reissued. I understand why it wouldn't be reissued right now, but why it hasn't. And since 2006, it seems like Diamond Select Toys would have had plenty of opportunity to reissue that figure well long before this HasLab came along. So I wonder, I have no idea, but I wonder if there's a particular reason for why Diamond Select Toys has never reissued that figure. Yeah, they've reissued Thanos, they've reissued the Watcher, but that Mephisto, again, as far as I know of, has never been reissued. Julio says, almost back to make a custom Dreadnoks muscle car. Well, I certainly feel there's probably model cars out there that you can buy cheaper if you wanted to do something like that. And if Hasbro just wanted to get a Robbie Reyes and his car out to market, I have no doubt that they could make it cheaper and get it priced to a point under $100 where they could then release it at regular retail. It wouldn't be as nice as this one. It wouldn't have as many accessories and things like that. But if they really wanted to get Robbie Reyes and his car out to retail, I'm sure they could make it cheaply enough to get it priced to a point. Walmart and Target wouldn't have any interest in carrying a $350 Marvel Legend vehicle, but if it was $75, $80, they would probably carry it, but it wouldn't be as nice as this one. 3M says they won't reissue Mephisto for the same reason why it's part of HasLab. If you mean because of retail, selling a action figure of the devil, it's possible. But I mean, they got it out one time, so but that is certainly a possibility of why it's never been reissued. Quinn's comment, what do I think about it? I don't think it's going to be as nice as this HasLab. You know, if you look at that that Batmobile thing, that monster truck that they did. I mean, that was just a shell that you lift off, and no, the doors don't open, nothing. I mean, that is probably as cheap as you can make something, and that was what, 60, $70, something like that. So I expect the Michael Keaton Batmobile is going to be of similar quality. Look at Spin Master. Spin Master had, did that. It was technically for 12-inch figures, but it actually worked okay for 6 and 7-inch figures. But they did that comic book Batmobile. That was cheap. That was made for kids. So yes, companies can make super cheap things even in the 6 or 7-inch scale, but the quality is not the same. So, if Hasbro released a super cheaply made Ghost Rider in his car, would people be interested in buying it? I can't answer that, but I suspect people would start complaining and bitching and saying how cheap it is and why doesn't it have more accessories and things like that. But, I don't know. I believe so, but and I'm not as familiar with that character, but is Sabak the devil? See, I mean, people use, would say, well, Surtur, the Asgardian, which is kind of in that same area, but he's not actually the devil. Mephisto, for all intents and purposes, is the devil of the Marvel Universe. So there is a difference. It's a fine line, but there is a difference in doing a demon like character and doing the actual devil. And I'm not saying I agree with it, but I'm saying from a religious nut standpoint, I think there's a difference. So possibly, John. Yeah, and I mean that 66 Batmobile again is made fairly cheaply. It's not super high quality. I mean, it looks okay. I have it right up here. It looks okay sitting up here on my shelf in front of the Batcave, but it's not what I would call a super detailed, collector oriented. It was made to be cheap. And that's another interesting question when we start talking about the expense of this hobby. What's more important to you, quality, accessories, or price? If you want the lower price, then you have to be willing to give up the quality and things like the accessories and stuff. So, everybody wants their cake and eat it too. They want it all. They want the low price. They want super articulation. They want tons of accessories. They want super detailed paint applications. They want it all. And then they get mad when the price of these things start to go up. So, that's probably a more important question for the fandom in general is what's more important to you, keeping the price down or getting more quality? And I don't know what the correct answer. Again, that's going to probably be something that depending on your financial standing, is going to differ. If you don't, if you have a very low budget to spend on action figures, you're probably going to want cheaper. And somebody who has plenty of money to spend was probably going to want the more quality. But and again, if you say, do you want more quality in your action figures or more articulation or more accessories, everybody's going to say yes. But if you ask them, which would you choose, lower price or more, better quality, then I don't know what the answer to that question is. But Sean says we're in a niche hobby, disposable income. Well, again, that's what I said. This is a luxury hobby. This is it's also is a niche hobby, but it's luxury, meaning, if you're spending hundreds of dollars a month or week or whatever on action figures, I would hope that you have plenty of disposable income. I really hope that you're not putting yourself in debt in order to buy the latest action figures, because that's just crazy stupid if that's what you're doing. There are definitely people who run themselves into debt buying stuff that they probably shouldn't be buying, whether it's action figures or whatever. But if that's what you're doing, you should probably stop and reevaluate. Get out of the hobby and even saving your money. If like you have no save, if you're sitting there with no savings in your bank account and you're living from paycheck to paycheck, you might pick up an action figure here or there, but if you're spending tons of money on action figures, I mean, that's probably not the wisest thing. I'm not sitting here pretending to be a financial advisor, but just based on my own personal experience, and I've been there. I was young. I spent money on stupid shit that I shouldn't have when I didn't have the money. There was a time where I bought a lot of stuff on credit card and built up a lot of credit card debt. And I wish I hadn't done that. I wish when I was younger, I hadn't done that. I've since, I'm pretty much, other than my mortgage, I'm debt free, but I definitely wish I had been smarter when I was younger with my money and saved it more and not bought as, things that I really, at the end of the day, didn't need. Um, so I had posted the question when I was, promoting the face, um, this live stream tonight. I had posted the question about what we were going to be talking about tonight, and I won't say his name, but somebody who works in the has worked in the toy industry, has owned his own toy company, small toy company, before, and he chimed in and mentioned some, and what I think are legitimate reasons for increased costs. So one of the things he suggested was just the cost of manufacturing has gone up so drastically, as overseas workers have demanded more pay and things like that. So that's one reason. But also, and this was more of an interesting tidbit that I thought was, he was talking about how, because so much product comes out from so many different companies today, that companies are making smaller production runs of all their stuff, that drives up the cost even more. It's just like with the HasLab. The more backers the HasLab gets, that drives down the cost for Hasbro. That's why like, I saw a lot of people with, say, well, Hasbro should have made the Mephisto figure the early bird figure. Well, that sounds great for us, the consumer, but it's not really practical, because the Mephisto is a brand new figure, that cost a lot more for Hasbro to make, as opposed to the human Robbie Reyes, which is essentially the same figure as the regular Robbie Reyes with a different head sculpt. So that figure was a lot cheaper, and that's why they made that the early bird figure, because Hasbro wasn't getting any more backers with the early bird figure. They were just trying to get to the minimum number faster. But the Mephisto, if they had offered that as the early bird figure, that would have thrown everything out of whack, because that would have been a lot more expensive figure, and therefore they needed based on what they've said, essentially they need the 12,000 backers to justify the cost of the Ghost Rider, the car, and the Mephisto. So the more they make, the cheaper it is, essentially, the more it lowers the cost of production. But getting back to just action figures in general, what this guy was saying was that companies are making, because they're releasing so much stuff, that's essentially stuff doesn't sit out on the shelf nearly as long as it used to. So, and there's not as many places that sell the stuff. Back when he was doing action figures, you had, action figures sold at places like Tower Records and Sunco and places like that. So there was just a lot more retail space out there for places to sell action figures than there is today. But he was saying that because companies are essentially doing smaller production runs, like 10,000 to 20,000, which back when he was doing action figures was not considered a lot, was not considered, if an action figure line only sold 10,000 units, that was not a very successful action figure line. And, he was doing the action figures he was making was, selling in the number of like 100,000 units. So that's one of the things that has driven up the cost. And that's actually something I hadn't even really thought about before. And that's where I go into, when you start hearing these guys who don't work in the industry, haven't dealt with people in the industry, that they just, their expertise is that they buy a lot of action figures, and they start telling you how much these things cost. Those guys probably really don't know what's involved in making this stuff, and really doesn't have a very firm understanding of why something might cost as much as it does. So I thought that was an interesting, thing to consider, because again, while, I've been covering the industry for 20 years and I've talked with people in the industry before, that's really just not something I had ever thought about, that thinking about how companies are not making as many of something as they used to. The production runs are just smaller in general, because they are putting out so much stuff so fast, and it's not on the market that long, and therefore they're not selling as many of that production, and so things are just more expensive to make because of that, if that makes sense. I don't know if I explained it that great there, but just like I said, there's just lots of little things that go into these things that people just don't honestly even realize, that are costs. The Hasbro NBA figures, which again, that's something I have no interest in. I'm not going to spend $50 for an NBA basketball figure. but I'm not going to sit here and say that Hasbro's just price gouging you. You know, my guess is that NBA license is very expensive. The player likenesses are very expensive. You know, Nike and things like that. You know, those are all very expensive things. And so, I mean, Hasbro has some of those NBA players actually promote. You know, they put up a video on social media. I forget which NBA player it was, but he was actually, you know, promoting the starting lineup figure. That guy that NBA player isn't doing that for free. So, you know, there's a lot of costs that are going into that line. Now, I don't think we, as in the regular action figure collector, is really who Hasbro's targeting those starting lineup figures to. I think Hasbro is attempting to try and break into a different, primarily. I mean, there will be some action figure collectors like us that will buy those or interested in those, but I don't think we're the primary demographic that they're aiming for with those. You know, your Marvel Legend type collector. I don't think that's who they're aiming for. I think they're aiming at sports fanatics who, you know, that's again often a very kind of luxury hobby type thing. And I can tell you, you know, those guys that spend, you know, hundreds and hundreds of dollars for tennis shoes and things like that, you know, that's who I think they're kind of trying to target with these new starting lineup figures. So they're not for me. I'm not going to buy any, but I'm not, you know, I can kind of understand why they might cost $50 each. Um, Mr. Allmind says he was surprised. I won't say I was surprised. Not much surprises me these days, but I wasn't expecting them to be that expensive. And of course, I wasn't surprised at all that lots of people started coming out and say, "Oh man, Hasbro's lost their minds. They're crazy." I don't necessarily think that's the case. Remember, these are basically just being sold on Hasbro Pulse. These are not being sold at mass retail, and that did surprise me at first. You know, I really would have thought something like NBA and such would be something that Hasbro would want to have out at Walmart and Target and stuff. But of course, at $50 a pop, Walmart and Target aren't going to touch those things. So, you know, that's probably why they're not carrying those figures. But I was surprised that this was essentially a Pulse exclusive line. I think like the NBA shop is carrying them or something like that. But primarily, you know, these are being sold in very limited fashion on the Hasbro Pulse website. So again, we're looking at figures that are probably going to have very small production runs, at least with these initial figures. I don't know if they'll expand the starting lineup and do other types of figures, you know, maybe do cheaper ones that they get out at regular retail. I don't know. But with these, you know, this wave that they announced today, you know, those are going to be done in a very limited number, which means, you know, that's another factor that goes into the cost. We could be Buff 88 says we could be heading into a toy apocalypse in the near future if a lot of collectors get priced out. And you're right, that is certainly a possibility. And you know, again, if you listen to my live streams on a regular basis, you've probably heard me say before that the price on these things are only going to go up, and at some point these companies will end up pricing themselves out of the market, and that's probably when, you know, this hobby will come to. I don't know if it'll ever totally end. There'll always be, you know, action figures of some type, and there'll be some you know, there'll be, I mean, this isn't a huge hobby to begin with, but you know, definitely we could get to that point where people just leave the hobby because it's become too expensive. And if it ever gets to a point, see, one of the things, you know, you should look at is, if like somebody asked me, you know, do I think these NBA figures are going to be successful? And I have no idea, to be absolutely honest. and it's not like Hasbro's going to come out if they're not successful. It's not like Hasbro's going to come out and say they weren't successful. They'll just kind of disappear and we'll never hear from them again. So if you continue to see Hasbro do more waves of these figures, then you can bet there's at least enough people out there buying them to sustain the line. If we never see another wave of these figures, then that's probably a safe bet that you can assume the line didn't sell and Hasbro canceled it. You know, going to the Ghostbusters. I don't think the Ghostbusters was terribly successful for Hasbro. It's why you don't see them producing a lot of toys. Now, I don't think they've given up the license. My guess is they might be waiting for the next movie to come out to see if they can kind of relaunch the line at that point. But I don't think Ghostbusters was very successful for them, and that's why you're not seeing them produce a lot in the way of Ghostbusters right now. So you know, a toy company's never really ever going to come out and say, "Oh yeah, this line completely bombed. We didn't sell anything." But when something kind of just when they quit making something, you can tell, you know, that's a good indication that it must not have sold very well for them. Um, so as far as like the starting lineup stuff, we'll see if, you know, we get a second wave or not, or a third wave. You know, they might have already planned the second wave, but you know, if we're still getting these by wave 3, you know, then they're probably selling well enough to, you know, again, at least sustain the line, because Hasbro's not going to take a loss on these, on, you know, a steady loss on these and keep doing them if nobody's buying them. Well, again, they're also being sold on the NBA shop. You know, I don't follow sports that much, but I guess there's an NBA store website, and they're being sold there as well. So, and again, they've got the NBA players actually, you know, doing commercials for these figures. So, and they're going to spend a lot of money on social media advertising, probably gearing it towards sports fanatics. So, you know, somebody who follows a lot of sports pages, NBA sports pages, will probably start seeing Hasbro Pulse advertisements pop up in their Facebook feed or Instagram feed or what have you. So, you know, Everett. Icon Heroes 6-inch Karate Kid figures, but they're based on the first films, not Cobra Kai, as in the show. That's correct, Everett. I saw you ask about the Daniel LaRusso and Mr. Miyagi 2-pack um, before the stream started. And that was this year. That was Icon Heroes released that as a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive this year. I believe you can still go to the Icon Heroes website and pre-order that set. Um, but that went up during San Diego Comic-Con time. Bean says, give you Johnny Mike Barnes 3-pack. I haven't heard them. You know, I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't know. That's another line that's the Karate Kid is another line where, like, I would have never. There's never. I like the Karate Kid. You know, I've seen all the Karate Kid movies. I've enjoyed Cobra Kai. I thought this last season of Cobra Kai on Netflix was the best season to date. I do feel like maybe they're kind of getting to the point of, you know, where they need to kind of wind it down. I'm not sure how much more they have left they can do in the series, but I've been enjoying the Cobra Kai series. Sony's doing another Karate Kid movie, which sounds like it's going to be like a reboot, another type of reboot movie. But I've never really been that. I've never sat there and go, God, I wish they would do Karate Kid figures. So like for me personally, while I've enjoyed the Karate Kid movies and shows and stuff, I've never been that interested in wanting to have Karate Kid action figures. But you know, I'm sure there's at least a small market for those. But whether Icon Heroes or Diamond Select Toys has had huge success with their figures, you know, Diamond Select Toys is doing the Cobra Kai stuff, Icon Heroes is doing the original Karate Kid movie stuff. You know, and how well those are selling, I don't know. But you know, if they're selling decently enough, I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing some of those other guys done as action figures as well. Devon says, "Is this really even a question? Of course, it's too expensive." Well, it is a question, and it's only a question that you as the individual can answer. You know, and the question isn't really do you like paying more for, that's a different question. I'm not asking do you like paying more for action figures. Of course nobody wants to pay more for an action figure. The question is, are people still, even at the higher prices, essentially, are people still buying the action figures? And since companies still make them, I'm going to assume the answer is yes. um, but that's the real question. Of course, nobody wants to pay more for action figures. But at what point does it become so expensive that you're no longer collecting them? And again, that's only something you as the individual can answer for yourself. Nobody else is going to be able to answer that question for you. Not me, not some other guy on YouTube, not somebody on Facebook. Only you can answer that question. John, if McFarlane had the Marvel license, would we have an entire Mephisto wave? That's an interesting question. McFarlane, as far as himself, I'm sure would have, from the standpoint of would he be afraid to put out an action figure of the devil? No, I don't think he would. He's a, yeah, as he said himself, he is a, McFarlane Toys is a privately held company. It's not a publicly traded company, so you don't have to worry about shareholders. I don't know. I don't. We've talked about Hasbro and Mephisto, but I don't know where Disney and Marvel stands on Mephisto. So, and going back to the question I asked earlier about why hasn't Diamond Select Toys reissued Mephisto since 2006? Well, maybe it's because Disney won't let them. So maybe Disney is as much plays a much of a role in why Hasbro was only able to do Mephisto through the HasLab as anything. I don't have that answer, but if McFarlane himself, if it was completely up to him. Now, is Mephisto a popular enough character for McFarlane to do? Since McFarlane seems to, McFarlane is not done a great job on giving us obscure non-Batman characters. So, while McFarlane might have no problem doing a character of the devil, Mephisto himself might be too obscure for him to, if McFarlane had Marvel Legends, would every figure be Spider-Man and maybe Iron Man? We'd probably be getting as many Spider-Man figures if McFarlane did Marvel Legends as we get Batman figures. So, different reasons, but I'm not sure we would get a Mephisto figure from McFarlane if he had that license. I don't blame you, Corn. The pets are definitely the stars of the show. I assume you mean action figure because he's drawn Wolverine in the comics, but I assume you would love to see McFarlane draw a Wolverine figure. Michael, I still have not watched I've fallen behind. I've not watched the last two episodes of She-Hulk. Um, I have not yet watched Andor yet, which the first three episodes aired, so I've got three episodes of that to watch. I did watch the latest episode of Lord of the Rings series on Amazon, but I have not watched the last episode of the Game of Thrones series on HBO. I've not yet watched the He-Man series, so I'll be honest. I've gotten sucked into watching reruns of Bonanza. I've been on a Western kick, and I've been watching a lot of old episodes of Bonanza. And yes, I'm old. In fact, tomorrow is my birthday. Tomorrow I hit the big 50, which is not something I'm super excited about, but but yeah, I'm definitely an old fogey, and I've been watching old episodes of Bonanza. She-Hulk is good for sitting on your phone. I haven't minded the She-Hulk series, but I think the episodes are way too short. So honestly, I'm almost of a mind to just wait for the series to run its course and then watch the remaining episodes all at once, as opposed to watching them once a week. Because they're just so short, and it's like you start watching it and it's over before it even begins. Thank you, Dwayne. Love your vids. But your doggo some snack. Oh, Logan here has a subscription to Chewy, which is like an online service for pet products. And so once a month, this huge box of greenies, bones, and vitamins show up for him. So Logan is well taken care of. A happy belated birthday, sci-fi. Yeah, I know like turning 50 isn't really any different than being 49, but it sounds old. It's just like, I mean, I remember as a kid when some you would say somebody was 50 and I would think, "Oh my God, those super old people." Yeah, Dimitri, we talked a bit about the starting lineup stuff. Thanks, Dwayne. I didn't name Logan came from the shelter. He was about 1 when we got him. So he was already pre-named, but I definitely like the name. Like I was like to me, Cassian Andor was probably the least I like Rogue One. I thought Rogue One is probably the best modern Star Wars movie that we've gotten from Disney, and I thought they did a really good job with it. Cassian Andor was probably my least favorite. I didn't hate him, but he was probably my least favorite character in that movie. So I can't say like I'm super excited about a series about Cassian Andor, but my hope is that the series is more about the Rebel Alliance in general and the formation of the Rebel Alliance, not just you know, and obviously Cassian's kind of the focal point, but I'm hoping we get some good insight on like the formation of the Rebel Alliance in this series. Which is one of the things I really liked about the Rebels series, the animated series about Rebels, because I thought they did a pretty good job of kind of like filling in those gaps of about getting us from episode 3 to episode 4. Yeah, Julio. A lot of people give Hasbro shit for their high prices, and I think in large part because Hasbro makes. I mean, is Hasbro by far is not a perfect company in any shape or form, but if you're being honest, we wouldn't have this hobby without Hasbro. Um, so, but a lot of people like to give shit to Hasbro for their high prices. Meanwhile, they're spending $55 on a Super 7 figure or, $80 on a Four Horsemen figure, or even NECA figures, $35. Think those are starting to get up there. So Hasbro's not alone in these price increases. And one of the things I've said before is, you know, when companies see that you're willing to spend that kind of money on action figures, or even when they see not you, I'm not talking about any one of you specifically here, but just in general, when they see people in the hobby and they run out to eBay and they're spending $100 for a figure that had only cost $20, just so they can be like one of the first people to get it, because they didn't have enough patience to wait for it to come, for a retailer to get it in stock. That sends a message. That sends a message that you guys are willing to spend a lot of money on these things. I'm not saying that to say that Hasbro is ripping you off, but I'm saying it gives them the go ahead to start making figures more expensively. So yeah, same thing with the Kickstarter. People give Hasbro crap for, like, Hasbro shouldn't be doing a crowdsourcing thing. Why not? If it's okay for the small guy to do it, why isn't it okay for the big guy? They're all businesses. They're all trying to make money. Like, this idea that only a company of a certain size should be able to do a crowdsourcing thing, I think is ridiculous. I don't like the crowdsourcing model, period. I'm not a fan of that model to begin with. But the fandom seemed to have no problem with these other companies doing these crowdsourcing things, and they're dime a dozen. There's so many, every time you turn around, there's some new Kickstarter going on, and those Kickstarter figures are not cheap. Like a 3 3/4. I see places trying to do 3 3/4 inch figures for what, $30, $50. I mean, so there are these precedents that get set with people, showing that they're demonstrating, not everybody, but enough, demonstrating that they're willing to spend a lot of money on these action figures. And so, of course, companies are going to try and take advantage of that. It used to be that the idea was the company didn't think somebody would spend $20 for an action figure. They didn't think somebody would spend $30 for an action figure. So they didn't make them, they made them more cheaply. But as they've started to realize people are willing to spend that much on an action figure, they're, more and more people are trying to take advantage of that. Jerry says he's off and unboxing some T-Cats to display. Now, my Thundercats are all out. You can see them. I don't know how well you can see it, but they're back there. I do have some stuff I got to open, though. I just got the Dark Troopers, Black Series Dark Troopers. I got to open those. I got my Grizzlor from Mattel Creations today. I posted an image on social media, but I got my Grizzlor. So I got, and I'd previously gotten the wave with the Mantenna, the Masters of the Universe Origins. So I hadn't opened those yet, but I went to open those today. And of course, the G.I. Joe Crimson Guard. Those, I love those figures. Those are my favorite figures of the week. Julio says he's looking forward to Super. I have. That's something I haven't opened either. I got the bat that they offered during San Diego Comic-Con, so I need to open that and take a look at it, and that's really why I got that, because I wanted to see what the quality was of Super 7's Joe figures. So I have the first wave on pre-order, but I'm not, I'm not like necessarily all in on that line. So, and I mean, Hasbro's been doing such a good job with the classified figures that, you know, well, I don't know if I would say McFarland single-handedly created well, I don't know. I mean, yes, McFarlane certainly deserves a lot of credit for the adult action figure market, 100%. Um, but I mean, and I'm trying to think what came for, like, going back to Star Wars, Hasbro's initial Star Wars offering, while they weren't, when they initially relaunched Star Wars, the Power of the Force line, I don't think they were targeting the adult action figure collector, but I guarantee you a line like that brought in a lot of adults to action figures. So 100% McFarlane deserves credit. And one of the stories I've heard McFarlane tell is um, like his very first toy fair, where he was showing off his products to like Toys R Us representatives. And this was some, back then, I will say, I'll put it this way. I think McFarlane deserves credit for being the first one to acknowledge the adult action figure collecting market and actually specifically start making products for the adult action figure market. Um, I think that's the best way to say it. So yes, I would McFarlane. I definitely would give credit for that. But again, there are GI Joe and Star Wars, things that a lot of us from the 80s grew up on, and then when Hasbro started to introduce those lines back into the market again, when they initially started to do that, their target market was the kids. They were doing it for the kids. But I think that also brought in a lot of the adult collectors that are around today, um, that started to buy those products, even though they weren't really being made for them. So I wouldn't give, and I think when you look at the number of different figures that Hasbro makes, whether it's Star Wars, whether it's GI Joe, whether it's Transformers, um, you know, they by large make the most action figure lines today than I think any other company. And so I, that's what I mean by when I say Hasbro. This hobby wouldn't be around if it wasn't for Hasbro. Um, and I do think, as far as large companies go, Hasbro was the first company to really kind of start acknowledging the adult action figure demographic. McFarlane was the first, who at the time was a very small, independent toy company, was the first to really start to make products for the adult action figure collector. But I think as far as like large mega companies, maybe Lego, Lego to me is kind of a different brand, so I don't necessarily put Lego in there as the same category with action figures, but Hasbro I think was the first big company to really start to realize there was a market to be tapped into with the adult action figure collector. It was a slow process, but before Mattel, before uh, Jazzwares, before Playmates, before Hasbro was starting to gear their products more and more for adults. They always continue to have the kids in mind, but they started to acknowledge the adult collectors, I think, well before any other large company. And then, like I said, McFarlane, I think, was really the first company to start specifically making products for the adult action figure collector in this country. In this country, I think if you go over into like Japan and stuff, or China and stuff, collecting action adults collecting action figures has been a lot more happened there well before it started happening here, I think. Well, as far as expensive, I mean, Lego is, to me, is super expensive. um it's probably why I've never really gotten into Legos, is because they're so expensive. So I mean, that's just more proof that there are definitely people out there who are willing to spend lots of money for these things. T-Glue. Where did I get the custom Cobra Commander head? I got it from a customizer, but I, his name slips my mind. But let me see if I can find his name for you real quick. I can't find it right. I gave him a shout out when I first showed that figure off in a video. I gave him a shout out, but off the top of my head, his name slips my mind. But I found him on Instagram. I can tell you that, but I can't find the email with his name in it. So I'm terrible with names. Devon, no, I don't think I've ever heard of Pastor Payne. I feel like that's a name if I had heard before I would remember. Dimitri, is Mindbender coming back on Pulsecon? I am not entirely sure. I assume you mean is it going to be put up back up for pre-order during Pulsecon? I want to kind of say yes, but I don't think Hasbro has specifically said, so I wouldn't be surprised if he does, but I don't know for 100% sure. I know Serpentor will be going up, but I can't imagine that we won't get another shot at Dr. Mindbender, whether it's at PulseCon or at some other date. But I can't say, I don't want to sit here and say 100% that he will. Mr. Allmine, the only thing I know for sure that's going up tomorrow at Target for Hasbro is the two Star Wars Andor figures, the Shore Trooper and that Imperial guy, Helix or whatever. The two figures they showed off a couple of weeks ago that they announced as Target exclusives, again from the Andor series. Those are definitely going up for pre-order tomorrow. If anything, I there could be more stuff. Probably will be more stuff, but that's all I know for sure. And I know, Hasbro originally, or not Hasbro, but Target originally had said GI Joe was going up for pre-order tomorrow, and then they changed it to just Hasbro. So hopefully we will get some GI Joe stuff tomorrow. But again, um, Target will update their website at 3 a.m. Eastern time. That's when they always update their website, giving the preview of what's going up for pre-order later in the morning. So as soon as that goes up, we'll have it up on the sites. But at least two Star Wars Black Series figures based on the Andor series are going up tomorrow, and we'll have to see what else, if anything else. I think probably more, but I can't say for sure. Do I think Todd McFarlane could buy the rights to Venom character? No, I don't. Todd's got, I'm sure, has a lot of money, but I don't think he has that much money. And more specifically, I don't think, Marvel would sell it, or Disney and Sony. Usually I am around that time. I won't say exactly at 3 a.m., but I usually have those posted pretty early in the morning. And amazingly, I'm not the only one. You'll see, there's some guys that sit on social media posting stuff all the time, and they're usually up around that time too. So I always kind of laugh, but there's, people I guess just don't sleep in this hobby. They don't go up for, just to clarify, we'll get the preview at around 3 a.m. Eastern time. They don't go up for actual pre-order until 9 a.m. tomorrow on the Target website. So whatever it is won't actually be available for pre-order until 9 a.m. But we'll get our first look at whatever is going up for pre-order tomorrow at 3 a.m. Sorry, the text is really small. Sir Davy says, I don't think, thanks for the super chat, by the way. I don't think the hobby is too expensive. It's keeping up with the rising production costs, shipping costs, raw materials. Yeah, I mean, there's truth to that. I mean, profit margins are built into these things. Yes, these companies are going to be making profits, but yes, I mean, it's just the sad truth that, expenses are going up on these things. I sleep a little bit, but I wake up. Another sign of old age is I usually wake up at least once during the night because I have to pee. So for you youngins out there, that's something you get to look forward to when you get older. But yeah, I usually will wake up in the middle of the night and I'll usually pick up my laptop or iPad and look at and glance and see if there's something out there that needs to be posted. 'Of course, watch tonight. I'll oversleep, and one of you guys will be up at like 3 a.m. and you'll be like, "Where's the post? Where?" So, and I have like I don't always have it up right at 3. Like probably last week I didn't have it up until like 5 in the morning. Like last week was just those wrestling figures, so I wasn't like I didn't think we were gonna get anything super excitingly revealed. We'd already seen those wrestling figures that went up last week, and I didn't know exactly what it was from Mattel that was going up, but I didn't think it was going to be anything like breaking news or anything like that. The NECA stuff was the same way. I mean, we kind of knew already what it was going to be. 3M says he has to get up and pee in the middle of the night in his 30s. I don't remember waking up every night having to pee in my until more recent years. Tom says, "What am I looking forward to? In general in life, or tomorrow's pre-orders from Target?" I do hope we get some GI Joe reveals tomorrow. I do. I mean, if we do, it's going to be like Tiger Force and Python Patrol stuff. But I hope we get some GI Joe. I mean, GI Joe Classified is probably my favorite action figure line going right now. So I always like to see the new GI Joe Classified reveals. Corn that yeah. We used to do that in college where you'd stick the guy's hand in water and he'd pee himself, especially when they were drunk. Now, Lord Venger, what is my go-to birthday cake? I've always been a yellow cake chocolate icing kind of guy. I don't like chocolate cake. I like chocolate icing, but I don't like chocolate cake. Well, that certainly could be it too. You know, I feel like my blood pressure always goes up when I go on social media and start reading through Facebook groups. uh, do I do I ever collect any third party Transformer figures? Example, the Bayverse Oversight. I don't collect a lot of third party Transformers. I collect no Michael Bay stuff. I hate the Michael Bay designs. So I don't buy any of the Michael Bay figures. I have a couple of G1 third party Transformers. I have a Reflector because I figure Takara is never going to do a masterpiece Reflector. And I have Galvatron, a third party Galvatron. I think that's it. But I'm not a huge third party Transformer collector. Banana slices? No, I don't think it's ever occurred to me to have banana slices on my cake. I'm not a big banana guy. Strawberries. Give me strawberries any day of the week, but not bananas. Well, that's the other thing. I always get up in the middle of the night and I have to get a drink of water. So that's probably why I have to pee because I also always get up and get a drink. Like I'll pee and then I'll go get a drink of water and then I'll have to get up a few hours later and have to pee again. No, not don't add 12 years onto my age. Not 62. No. Yeah, I will. Yeah, when I do long runs, I will eat. You're right. Bananas are good. A good food for running and stuff. But I just in general, I'm not a huge banana fan. I have never been a huge fan of like ice cream cakes. Uh, I have not heard that per se, but I also haven't seen them. I don't think I've seen them announce any new Predator figures for a while. They've kind of switched to Judge Dredd is what they've been doing primarily. They had that Snake Eyes GI Joe figure. I wonder how many GI Joe figures they're going to end up doing. Nest generally no, I do not turn. I used to turn them off at night, but usually I just leave them running. I probably should turn them off. It's probably better for them. They'll probably last longer, but I don't. Yeah, when it comes to Transformers, I'm mostly just a G1 guy. I do like red velvet. I like red velvet cake. Not usually for my birthday, but I do like red velvet cake. I like carrot cake. I don't like carrots, but I like carrot cake. All right, well, it's getting on to be about 8:30, so I think we're gonna call it a night. Let you know. Hopefully, most of us, just to sum up tonight's main topic of the expensive hobby. I mean, to me, I feel like as the hobby gets more expensive, And unfortunately, I think it will continue to get more expensive. As I say, prices are probably only going to go up. They're not going to go down. But I think the key is just to be more selective. You don't need to buy everything. Get what you like. Don't let other people tell you what to buy or what not to buy. If you like this Ghost Rider HasLab, then go back it with confidence. If you don't like this HasLab, don't back it. Don't even look back. Be like, yeah, I don't need that, and walk on. Don't let someone tell you should go back it so you can cancel your order later. But I think it's pretty much that simple. Get what you want, get what you get enjoyment out of. If you can't afford it right now, don't put yourself in debt. But if money's not really the issue, then just buy what you want. You don't have to buy everything. And I think it's pretty much that simple. I don't think prices are really going to go down. If prices go down, then that means the quality is going to go down. That's when you see things like 5 points of articulation figures. That's why companies do those. Those are $10 figures generally. That's why they do those, because that's, they're trying to get some stuff out there that's cheaper. But like for me, it's cheaper, but I have no interest in 5 points of articulated figures. So, but get what you want, get what you like. Don't get muddled down in line by line cost analysis from all the so-called experts out there. If it's something you like, if it's something you're going to enjoy, then it's worth spending the money on. If it's not, then it's not. And like I said, I think it's pretty much that simple. But thank you everybody for the birthday wishes. I really appreciate it. I probably will be back tomorrow with a regular news video, so hopefully you will check that out. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And until next time, guys, I will no, I'm not. Yep. I will catch you guys later.
Hey, thanks for watching today's video, and be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that bell notification so alerted every time I upload a new video. And be sure to head over to the Toy News International and Marvelous News message boards communities. It's a great place to talk toys and win cool contests like $100 store credits to Big Bad Toy Store. And remember, action figures are great!